let's talk a little bit about the Big Ten's big return. We got a couple of interesting games. I know everybody's eager to see the Ohio State Buckeyes, the preemptive number one team in the Big Ten. And I think within a couple of weeks anyway, well, they're already in the top 5 in the AP poll, aren't they? Even though they haven't played. We can debate about that all you want. But the bottom line is Ohio State is considered to be one of the top 5 teams in the country, whether they've taken a snap or not. We'll get our first look at the 2020 Buckeyes team. What do you expect to see? I mean, clearly you follow the Buckeyes closer than most people probably on my channel, certainly closer than I do as far as the roster and the coaching and all that. So obviously Justin Fields is coming back, what many people consider to be a top 3 Heisman candidate, to right there along with maybe Mac Jones at this point, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris. He's right in there in that mix. You guys lose one of the all-time best rushers at Ohio State, J.K. Dobbins, from last season. But Ohio State seems to be one of these teams, a lot like Georgia, a lot like Alabama. When you lose a top 5 running back in the country, you just plug another one in there and keep on rolling. So who are you looking for other than Justin Fields to have a breakout season this season?
And also consider that this is a team that had 2 of the top 3 NFL draft selections, meaning 2 of the top 3 guys that were drafted off the Ohio State defense, Chase Young and Jeffrey Okudah. So they lose their best pass rusher, lose their best corner, but Shaun Wade, who's now their number 1 corner, is going to be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. Really, the only concerns for Ohio State, as you mentioned, replacing J.K. Dobbins, there's really not one guy. There's Marcus Crowley, there's Demario McCall, there's Steele Chambers, and in particular, there's Master Teague, who we saw in the playoff game a little bit against Clemson when J.K. got hurt. And they got Trey Sermon from Oklahoma. So they get a lot of depth at running back, but who's going to be the guy or who's going to be the 2 guys is a bit under question. Probably Master Teague and Trey Sermon, who gained 1,000 yards a couple of years ago at Oklahoma. So they've got a lot of candidates at running back, but maybe not another J.K. Dobbins. The receivers, they're loaded. They got 6 or 8 guys that will get some snaps, even though they lost a couple more NFL wide receivers. The offensive line's stacked. Maybe the linebackers, there's some question mark. The guys that will play, that will start in the secondary are Ohio State standard, but they've got some depth issues in the secondary. So I think replacing J.K. Dobbins and finding depth in the secondary, other guys that can play there and play at the level that they need them to play at, are the biggest questions for the Buckeyes.
And they play against Nebraska to open up the season. That's it. That game is in the Horseshoe, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So it's in Ohio State. Not that really matters. I mean, I think there's a clear-cut difference between these 2 teams, but you don't sleep on Nebraska for a couple of reasons. Number one, I mean, we're not talking about an FCS or a Group of 5 team here. They are a Power 5 football team. They have a really good coach, and they have a lot of talent on their team. Also, it's the first game of the season after a long playoff since the last time they played a live football game. The last time they played was against Clemson, almost 11 months ago. So we saw first, it started with the Big 12 and the ACC. We saw a lot of weird stuff happen in the first week with the favorite team. Just a lot of rust to knock off. Teams come out flat. The other team has had a lot of time to scheme up for you and maybe throw some wrinkles into their system to try to throw you off. If you're Nebraska, I'm sure they're doing that. I'm sure Scott Frost is doing that. So this could get interesting. Now, I think at the end of the day, I mean, nobody's expecting an upset here, but at least in the first half, I think you watch out to make sure that Nebraska doesn't somehow throw some wrinkles in there and get up on you, and you're not coming from behind in the second half.
It's possible. 2 years ago, Nebraska came to Columbus, and they were only a 4-8 team at the end of the year. They were playing a lot better at the end of the year, but Ohio State went on to win the Rose Bowl and were a top 3 team in the country, and it was 36-31. It was a game. Ohio State went up there last year and had 45 points on at halftime. So maybe something in between those. But I would lay the 21. I think Ohio State's going to lay it on them pretty well. But like you say, it could be a 1/2 game that is pretty interesting.
I made a fortune, figuratively, because I can't bet a fortune, but I made a fortune, a killing, as they say in the betting world, betting on Ohio State every week last week to cover, and they did 11 out of 12 in the regular season. I think they covered, and most of them they covered by 2 touchdowns or more. I mean, they cover like nobody else. So I'm with you. I think when it's all said and done, by the time the clocks hit 0, this won't be a contest. I kind of hope. I know people think I hate Ohio State and everything. I don't. I don't hate them. Of course, when they play Clemson, we know who I want to win that game. But outside of them playing Clemson, I really am indifferent to whether they win or lose every week, unless I'm betting on them. But I would like to see at least a competitive game out of Nebraska. And this has more to do with Nebraska than it does Ohio State. It's time for Scott Frost to kind of put up or shut up. He's entering the Jim Harbaugh territory. Now, obviously, he took over a much worse situation than Jim Harbaugh did, but Jim Harbaugh didn't take over a rosy program either. But it's time for him to at least start to show some improvement there at Nebraska. And what better team to show that you've improved against than the number 1 team in the conference, Ohio State?
Yeah, I think Scott Frost is the man for the job. But yeah, he has 2 seasons under his belt, and he's won 4 and 5 games. His predecessor was going to bowl games, Mike Riley. His predecessor before that, Bo Pelini, got fired for going pretty much 9 and 4 every year. So Scott Frost, he was a great offensive coordinator at Oregon. He turned around UCF. He seems to be the fit for the program because he's a favorite son, just like Jim Harbaugh. Kind of that favored son coming back and coming off great successes elsewhere, just like Jim Harbaugh did. Jim Harbaugh instantly elevated the program to 9 wins, but then he hasn't done anything since then.
Right.
Frost is having a tough time doing that, and I think he's going to have another tough year this year because of the schedule. But I think he's the guy for the job.